Hey guys, it's Julie B. Deep Dives, and today I'll be going through the explosive new From Season 3 overview video that was released on Amazon this week. With Season 3 almost here, this new video has electrified the fandom with some mind-blowing revelations and shocking new scenes. Let's take a look at what's going on in this video, and I'll give you my take on it and my predictions. The new Season 3 overview consists of a mashup of cast and crew interviews along with scenes from upcoming episodes. Series creator and executive producer John Griffin describes Season 3 as, quote, the end of the beginning, and things in general are changing, unquote, which suggests that the first two seasons of horror are essentially a prologue to a much more intense level of horror that's forthcoming in Season 3 and beyond. Executive producer and director Jack Bender echoes this sentiment, saying, quote, the stakes have never been higher, and it's getting more and more intense, unquote. In my previous video, I discussed all of the new scenes involving Boyd and put them into context with everything we've already learned about his story arc, so I'm going to focus on everything else going on with the other characters in this video. Much like Boyd, Donna also seems to be breaking down and pushed to her limits like never before. We see her sobbing as Boyd comforts her, a level of emotion that we have never seen from her before. I believe this will likely be a reaction to another attack on Colony House. Ricky Hay, who plays Kenny, says in an interview clip, as the pillars of the town are starting to crumble, Kenny's realizing he has to step up to the plate. Now, Boyd and Donna are certainly the two pillars of the town, the leaders keeping things running smoothly, so I believe this is a reference to them. In my video called The Flight of Tabitha, I explained why I think the evidence is pointing to Tabitha returning in the ambulance. After seeing the Season 3 overview video, I'm even more convinced that she will be back in the ambulance. I think she will sneak out of the hospital, as a scene from the Season 3 video shows her seemingly trying to slip out of her room undetected right here. Now, some fans have taken notice of the sign outside her hospital room that appeared to say Level 2 at first glance. There's a popular theory that Tabitha might not really be in the real world, but actually in a Level 2 of Fromville. So some fans wondered if this sign is a clue, but on closer inspection, it actually says Level 12. I personally believe that Tabitha is in fact in the real world. The next scene involving Tabitha shows her standing outside and looking in the direction of a crowd of people down the street. If we take a closer look, there is a shocking reveal here. Can you spot it? It's none other than the boy in white, appearing to her in the real world. He's staring at her in his typical creepy way and waving. This is an explosive development that I predicted would happen in my video called The Flight of Tabitha. I theorized that Tabitha would see the boy in white in the real world, and that he would help guide her as to what she needs to do. His appearance on the street here also validates my theory about the ability of the boy in white to appear to people outside of Fromville, whether it's a dream, a vision, or a voice in someone's head. And I know others have independently arrived at this same theory as me. For example, Father Cautry said that before he arrived in Fromville, he was on a bridge about to jump off when, quote, for the first time in my life, I heard the voice of God, unquote. It told him to get back in his car and drive, and 2 hours later, he was in Fromville. I believe that it was actually the boy in white speaking to him, because the timing of this voice that he heard, and the timing of his arrival shortly after in this place, can't be a coincidence. Another example is Elgin, who had a dream involving the boy in white on his way into town on the bus, and I believe that he had this dream before he even entered this place. The boy in white appeared to him and recited the nursery rhyme that would later become part of the cicada entity. This is evidence that it was actually a premonition dream, and the boy in white was part of it. And then there's Tian Chen's husband, who was lured out of his home by the boy in white mimicking the sound of his brother's voices outside. Kenny and Tian Chen went out looking for him, and they found him, but before they could get home, they landed in Frumville instead. Again, the timing of this can't be a coincidence, in my opinion. While the appearance of the boy in white in the real world with Tabitha isn't definitive proof that the boy in white was responsible for all of these other encounters, it definitely gives more credence to these theories. This new information about the ability of the boy in white to project himself into the real world is truly a game changer and might give us some insight into the ways in which people can be drawn into Frumville and how much he might have to do with this process. Hopefully, this might be one of the answers that the showrunners have been promising this season. That being said, I believe the boy in white will help lead Tabitha to the house of Henry, who I believe is the father of Victor and Eloise. This is the reason why I think the boy in white pushed Tabitha out and sent her directly to a place within walking distance of Henry's house. There must be someone or something that the boy in white wants Tabitha to bring back to Frumville, maybe something in Henry's basement, or possibly a person, such as Eloise or Henry. Once Tabitha gets to Henry's house, we have another exciting reveal inside Henry's basement, a painting of the man in white, which we have seen in the opening credits since the series began. He's dressed exactly like the boy in white, except he's a grown man with a crow-shaped mouth, something that I believe Real Enigmas pointed out first. I believe the boy in white, in this iteration as the man in white, represents the same entity, who Sarah once said is not really a boy in her opinion. He has what looks like a small knife in his hand. The knife implies that he is causing harm to people, but he has a depressed and resigned look on his face, as if he has no choice but to play the role he's playing. Perhaps he is perpetuating a horrific cycle in Frumville, in order to keep a dangerous evil entity from escaping into the world. Now I believe that Eloise escaped Frumville as a child, and eventually painted everything in this basement, including this picture, due to visions of Frumville that continued to torment her long after her escape. Another new scene shows Tabitha saying, "I think I was sent here to find you," and I believe she is speaking to Henry. So even Tabitha is convinced that this is not just a coincidence. This uncanny event of finding herself sent out of Frumville into such close proximity as Victor's father. Later, we see that Henry is driving Tabitha somewhere, possibly to visit Eloise, who I think will be in a psychiatric institution. But before they can get there, or perhaps on their way back, a truck crashes into their car in another dramatic development. The impact is on Henry's side of the vehicle, so he will likely have major injuries. Since Tabitha has suspiciously turned up, but her family is still missing, and I believe she has snuck out of the hospital, the police may want to question her. So I predict that the new character Officer Acosta will respond to the scene of the accident and ride in an ambulance with Henry and Tabitha, since she might be considered a fugitive at this point. This is how I believe that she will end up in Frumville, in the ambulance. Henry was announced as a new character on the show this season, along with Acosta. So since it appears that Tabitha will wind up back in Frumville by episode 4, it's likely that he will end up there with her. If he were only appearing in 3 episodes, it might not be necessary to announce him as a new cast member. Another new scene shows the ambulance reaching one of the infamous downed trees, yet another different tree and different road from the other 2 arrivals that we saw on screen. It's getting close to dusk, and interestingly, there is next to no snow visible in this scene, whereas when the ambulance has arrived in Frumville later after dark, there is quite a bit of snow on the ground there. I think this discrepancy in the weather could be related to my theory that every time someone encounters an infamous downed tree, that space is neither here nor there, not in Frumville nor in the real world. If it were in Frumville, then they would conceivably encounter the tree again. But instead, everyone drives around in circles and never sees the tree again. If it were in the real world, it would be blocking traffic, and it would be likely that more than one car would encounter it at a time. But we know that having two cars arrive in town at once is very rare. So I theorize that the tree exists in a liminal space, or an in-between space, between our dimension and what I believe is a pocket dimension, where Frumville is located. When the ambulance arrives, I predict that the monsters will stand in the way, just as Donna said they did to her and her sister when they arrived at night. Acosta will get out of the ambulance, and when threatened by the monsters, she'll draw her gun, as you can see in the bottom left corner of this shot. Ultimately, Randall may have to save Acosta. He is shown outside at night in the full trailer here, facing down the creatures. In the new footage, we see him writhing on the ground, as if he still feels the cicadas attacking him, while some creatures have gathered around and are watching with fascination. In Season 2, when Randall was attacked by the cicadas and was laying in the woods all night, the creatures left him alone. I believe this is because there is a hierarchy of evil entities in Frumville, and the cicada entity is higher than the monsters, so they stay away from people who have that entity inside of them. This is a concept that Jeremy Eisenfire and others have discussed in his live streams. At any rate, we know from the Season 3 episode descriptions that Randall will survive this night, and he might help Acosta get to safety. Yet another reveal that we got from this video was basically confirmation to a theory that many of us already had, that Christy will be the person to get her leg caught in the bear trap that we saw in the trailer. We see her and Jade running as he looks back at something. Jeremy Eisenfire has suggested that Jade is looking at the vision of the Puritan man from the trailer, who was drinking out of a human skull and choking Jade. And I agree. We also get a shot of Jade and Christy together prior to this accident. I believe they will encounter the village of old cabins, which we see here beyond these totems. Moving on, we have yet another reveal. We see the ventriloquist's dummy next to someone who is wearing the shirt that Christopher was wearing in the vision that Jade saw in Season 2, and he appears to have the same body type. This is clear evidence to confirm a popular theory that many of us have had, that the dummy once belonged to Christopher, and he used it to make people laugh in the way that Victor described. But since Christopher changed after being plagued by visions of the symbol, he became a threat to Victor in some way, who was told by his mother to hide from him in the root cellar on the night that she died. Remember that in the creature's cave, Victor was not afraid of the monsters, but seeing the dummy triggered him into a panic attack. Now that we have this evidence that the dummy indeed belonged to Christopher, it certainly explains why Victor was triggered by it, and it confirms that theory. In this new scene, the dummy turns its head creepily, and I believe this is going to be yet another of Jade's visions, because Jade seems intrinsically connected to these visions of the dummy and Christopher, as he is now filling the role that Christopher once filled, seeing the visions of the symbol. Now, one of the most interesting and unexpected scenes in this video shows some crows smashing through the colony house windows and seemingly attacking Fatima, as well as Tilly and others. This is a bizarre new development. It's possible that Fatima's suspicious and seemingly unnatural pregnancy, a vessel for what I think is a non-human entity, could have drawn the crows in. Fans have long theorized that the crows may work for the evil entity in some way, and now it does appear that the entity may be controlling them based on this scene. I have long theorized that the crows metaphorically represent this evil watcher entity that is controlling the creatures, watching everyone and listening, and causing so much death and carnage. In the first scene with the crows, we looked down on the Matthews from the point of view of a crow on a branch, and I believe this symbolizes the fact that they are being watched by an evil entity at all times. When Tabitha and Victor made their way through the creature's cave, there was an iconic and enigmatic shot of a rat eating a crow. I think that the rat symbolizes the people here, who Jade once described as, quote, rats in a maze nibbling on their cheese, unquote. This scene also took place in a literal maze of cave tunnels. So in my opinion, this shot symbolizes and foreshadows the fact that in this cycle, the residents of Frumville will ultimately prevail over the evil watcher entity, though they will lose many more people along the way, I'm sure. Other new scenes include Victor having a meltdown and yelling at Ethan, "People die here. This is not make-believe." Julie is near tears, and Ethan is as well, as he clutches a crocheted blanket. And if you recall, in the funeral scene from the trailer, we did see Ethan walking up to the altar holding this blanket, so it likely belonged to Tian Chen. Victor is probably having this meltdown after Tian Chen's death. Since he is starting to dredge up more traumatic memories this season, based on the trailer and the episode descriptions, Victor is bound to be triggered in this way after long-buried memories of past trauma resurface. Interestingly, Victor also appears in an odd scene in what is likely the basement of Sarah's house, which she may have gotten back after the deaths of Reggie and Paula. It appears that they have built a kind of a fort in the basement, and it's caught on fire, as Victor is seen putting out the flames. To be honest, I'm not sure why they would be seemingly building a fort, but it makes a bit of sense to me that Victor and Sarah would be spending time together. With the disappearance of Tabitha, Victor might be blamed for bringing her to the lighthouse, so perhaps he bonds with Sarah because she is also a town pariah. They also appeared in a scene together here in her bedroom, where he discusses that it's never gotten cold or snowed here before, and in the trailer he told her that he needs to remember what's missing. Other new footage shows the granny monster transforming as she walks through Chen's house, which would be after Ethan and Julie have run out the back door, as the trailer showed us. We have another shot here that's similar to the one in the trailer, with Sarah covering Ethan's mouth as she helps him and Julie once they're outside and in danger. And here, we have Randall stepping out of the bus to usher in Sarah, Ethan, and Julie. Randall seems to be at the start of a redemption arc, putting himself at risk to help them. This scene shows Jim and Kenny entering the old village that they find in the woods, and then presumably returning from that trek in the woods, and they have what appear to be some long carrot greens hanging from their backpacks, so apparently they found some food in the forest to help with the dire lack of food in town. Heavy snow has fallen at this point, suggesting that winter weather will hit Frumville surprisingly fast. Boyd and Christy walk up to meet them, with Boyd clutching his arm again as if his Parkinson's symptoms have returned. Then, here we have Julie telling someone, "I think this place has gotten in my head now. I'm scared of what that might mean." I believe that she, Randall, and Marielle will have residual effects of the cicada entity that was inside of them in Season 2, and they will all be dealing with trauma from that experience. Now here, Fatima is shown walking outside and standing in front of a gigantic pile of rotten food, all of their remaining crops which have been destroyed. Fatima looks ghostly pale, clearly becoming increasingly ill due to her unnatural pregnancy. In the interview portion of this Season 3 overview video, Jeff Pinkner dropped the bombshell that, quote, a few of our most beloved characters won't make it out of this season, unquote. Unfortunately, I predict that Fatima will join Tien Shen as another beloved character who won't make it out. Another interesting tidbit is what sounds like Father Khatri's voice, saying, quote, it's getting pretty cold outside, unquote. And we've seen behind-the-scenes photos of him in costume on set. Plus, he's featured on the Season 3 poster, so it's a near certainty that our favorite Ghost Khatri will appear again, probably multiple times, as Boyd is struggling more than ever this season. Here in the final scene of the new Season 3 overview video, Boyd and Donna look out what appears to be a colony house window, presumably at something shocking, and it could be the arrival of the ambulance. If we look at Boyd's facial expression, he looks extremely uneasy here. In an interview clip, David Alpay said, quote, what the fans will appreciate this season is that we are getting real answers that matter, unquote. This is such an exciting statement that the fans have been longing to hear, and we're so close now to getting those answers as Season 3 fast approaches. So that's my roundup of all the new footage that was in the Season 3 overview video and what I think it all means. Now, I'd love to hear from you guys. What scenes stood out to you the most? Did the footage confirm or disprove any of your theories? Let me know what you think in the comments, and please leave a like if you enjoyed this video and consider subscribing. And as always, keep on deep diving and let's see what we can discover together.